So just before we officially get started, let me talk to you about the structure here. So we're going to talk about career ascension. We're going to talk about launching and running a startup, and then of course money stuff in general. This is not just a conversation to have fun, although it will be fun. This is a conversation because there are gaps in this country that are so utterly disturbing. Women, men, we're going to talk about the fact that 85% of women defer to spouses on financial matters. 75% of men have a retirement plan. Only 62% of women do. 80% of financial advisors are men, and then men invest 60% more than women. I don't need to tell any of this to Sallie because there is a reason that she started her company. Let me tell you, Sallie, a quote that I read, and then you can kind of expand off of that. This is a quote that I saw that you gave in an interview. The reason why I love being here is that it's not just talking about having more money for having more money's sake, though there's nothing wrong with that. At its core, we all know that money is power, and that if we don't have as much money as the guys do, we're not going to be fully equal with them. Were you always this person?
No, gosh, no. I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina. I was a cheerleader. I had the choice of playing soccer, but the cheerleader felt cuter and more dateable. And, I got married at the age of 22, literally less than a year out of college. So I had, certain expectations in my life that, if you'd asked me if I was a feminist, I would have said absolutely not. And this has been a significant progression over my life, having spent my career on Wall Street. And my background is I was CFO of Citigroup, and I ran Merrill Lynch, the wealth management business over there in Smith Barney. And, really bought into for years, come on, women, if I can do it, everybody just try harder. And, we can all get ahead under our own steam, and we just need to, just do stuff differently. Mm-hmm. And it really was pretty late in my career when I said, you know what, the deck is really stacked against us for a whole bunch of reasons. One, we're taught that we're not good with money or math. Just at the same time they're telling us not to go into technology and engineering, we're sort of learning we're not good at math or money. We receive different messages from our parents about money than our brothers do. They're told to make money, go for it. We're told to budget, be careful. To your point, Claire, just 2% of households does the woman take the lead in investing. So, our brothers watch dad invest and we don't. When we grow up, there's a lot of male money media, CNBC, Bloomberg, et cetera. There's no dedicated for us. And the stuff that we get from the mainstream women's media is about how hard money is, how scary it is, or it's patronizing. Don't buy the shoes, don't drink the latte, invest the money instead. And so for men, when you say the word money for them, that you say, what comes to mind? They say power, strength, independence. And for women, it's loneliness, isolation, and uncertainty. Mm. And so as a result, we don't ask for the raise, perhaps, because we're not talking about it. We don't know how much to ask for, right? We don't invest because we've been brought up that it's hard to do and we're not very good at it. Or it has to be Bitcoin trading. And so when, I came to the realization a handful of years ago that in many ways the deck is stacked against us. The industry is not built for us. Maybe there's a way to found a company that's for women, by women, without being, oh, we're so cute, drinking our glass of Chardonnay and talking about, stocks while we knit.
Right.
There's something really about how we want to engage with money. I'll leave one stat that I want to leave with before I shut up on this question, that everyone here should be aware of is, first of all, we women outlive the men in our lives. 80% of women die single. Not because we want to necessarily, but that's just how the demographics work. When we outsource the money to the men in our lives, which the majority of women still do, when that money comes back to us, 74% of us have a negative surprise. 74%. And so if there's not enough money, sadly he is gone, and it's us who sort of pay that price. And so getting women engaged in their money so that we can live those full lives. And because, as you started, Claire, if we don't have financial equality, we don't have equality. I mean, think about all the people you know who haven't left a terrible relationship because they don't have the money,
Right.
who are staying in a job they hate because they need the money, who aren't starting the business they want to start because they don't have the money. And I know, we've been taught as women talking about money's crass, but the truth is we won't have equality till we've got the money.
Right. Right. Oh, I'm going to read you another question. And everybody listening, we're starting in kind of like a depressing way, but we're going to get positive towards the end. So I promise you, and you're going to walk away with some tips. There's another quote that I read that you said in an interview, which was, the research tells you that the bar is higher for women, and women have to be better to have the same opportunities as men, especially in the workplace. It's the way that we have all been socialized. But I also read another quote that you gave about this experience that you had as a senior executive on Wall Street, where you got negative feedback. You were told that, quote, my work ethic, it was too strong and it was intimidating and off-putting to the other folks on the leadership team. And the second was that my profile was too high. Okay, so there seems to be a tightrope here where you work really hard, you do the best you can. Oh, wait, but now you're receiving negative feedback. So yeah, how did you kind of walk that tightrope for yourself?
I didn't, I got fired.
Oh, okay.
Look, so we've all heard of the double bind, right? Whereas women, we're expected to be nurturing and kind, but as business people, we're expected to be risk absorbing and hard charging. And bringing the two of those together is difficult. And Claire, what I've found over my career is I am who I am. I am who I am. Love my children and weep when I see, ads with puppies and kittens in them. But I also don't beat around the bush a whole lot. I am who I am. I have been in the top levels of Wall Street, and I have been fired on the front page of the Wall Street Journal twice.
Wow. I didn't know.
I didn't change my personality, and my business results didn't change. How I was received changed. That whereas a Sandy Weil at Citigroup was like, I love this, go. Mm-hmm. There were other people who were like, you aren't computing for me, and you work too hard. You're making other people feel uncomfortable. Your profile is too high. That's like the most damning thing you can say to a woman. I mean, isn't everybody on this call like cringing, like, ugh, oh no, looking for attention? Because we've been taught to sort of stay in that pack. And the research says when women are seen to be looking for power, people are like, oh yuck, men are, they're like, boys will be boys. And so, that feedback hurt badly. And by the way, when I came back to my boss and said, well, the only reason the profile is high is because the business is doing so well. So we've turned it around. People are writing about it. He's like, yeah, I don't care. You can't get more attention than your other, compatriots at the same business level. I'm like, I haven't done an interview in years without permission. He's like, yeah, too bad. So it's a double bind that has existed, and the bar has therefore been higher for us and more precarious for us. That is depressing. And I'm sorry to bring it up. It's depressing. I think the bit of joy that I can wring out of it, is that sometimes it's just, we're taught it's always our fault, mm-hmm. right? How many books have we read, about the recipe to become a billionaire, et cetera? There are cultural and systemic issues that continue to exist. And there's something freeing about, finally saying, you know what? Todd, my boss, seems like the nicest guy in the world, and he's actually never going to promote me. He's promoted Steve, he's promoted Joe, he's promoted Ted, he's promoted, John. But at some point, just saying, look, this just isn't my fault, that I can't get through his embedded biases that exist. Mm-hmm. And I've got to find another way. Not fair, but having that freedom of sometimes it is literally not your fault.
So as you were rising up the ranks, I think I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Did you wait to be promoted, or did you make your case, right? So as maybe you were seeing some other people getting promoted, did you ever go in and say, let me tell you why I'm ready and here's what I want? Like, how aggressive were you in asking for what you wanted?
Yeah, pretty aggressive. I mean, there was some serendipity, right? So I went from running Sanford Bernstein, which had 386 people on a Thursday, to running Smith Barney, which had 45,000 people on a Friday. I didn't call up the CEO of Citigroup and say, you need to put me in that job. I was performing at, had a differentiated strategy in the industry, was performing at a level that he came to me. So that does happen. But believe you me, I made a point of every year in the performance review, making sure before performance review that I was with my boss saying, hey, I just want to, as we're thinking about my team, just want to talk about what my team has accomplished.
And why are you, and why are you team tell everybody why you're saying team in that kind of way?
Well, that's right. So, this elevates you, which is you're talking about the things the team have done, which you have led. You're giving credit. It brings you up a level, and you don't have him like, she's bragging. Right. Women don't brag. That's very unladylike. But to go in and just, I just want to make sure you and I are on the same page on where the team has done well, where, we have more opportunities. And I go in and talk about money. I talk about money at the beginning of the year. If I do this, if we do this, for the company, what can we be looking for? And always tried to position it, Claire, not as a pay me more, but let's problem solve together about what's best for the company, right? So that you're happy to pay me X because we did this.
Mm-hmm. I always tell women, when you ask for more money, don't think of yourself as, a charity or nonprofit where you're like begging them to do you a favor, right? It's actually an investment in you. And they're investing in you because they think you're going to have returns for them. It's always about them and the bottom line. And so you have to position your ask in a way that's oriented towards making them money. Somebody sent in a question about networking. There's a reason it's called the old boys club, right? There were, and I think there still are clubs that only men can go in. So for you, how did you develop relationships with people? I mean, were you going to these kind of cigar bars or, was it after work hours? Like, how did you do this?
No, but it doesn't have to be that. So first of all, networking is the number one unwritten rule of success in business. And Claire, you know this better than I do. Men sort of get it earlier. Men sort of understand that the work that you do doesn't always have to be an A+ level. Sometimes it can be a B+. And then you spend the other time, engaging with other people. Whereas we women seem to come into the workforce with that school mentality of my project will be perfection. And then, networking is a little sleazy and a little playing golf. And let me do it the right way. I did have a fellow who was a mentor to me when I was in my late 20s, said something to me which really resonated with me. And I was a research analyst, and so I had to get my sell side, so I had to get my work out there. But he said, if you do great work and nobody knows about it, it doesn't count. It just doesn't count. And so with networking, it's, certainly not go out there and look at my great work, but it's giving and knowing and being known and engaging and learning. And so I sort of think of networking as an attempt to do favors for people, to connect with people and to learn, and to teach. And so, I don't go on the golf course, but will I have a glass of wine with someone? Sure. And back in the day, but even today, shooting an email, thinking about you, saw this article, thought you'd be, hey, I was working on a project and this interesting thing came up, or I was talking to so-and-so in this startup, because it'd be really interesting for you to look at and sort of be one of those people who's out there giving and engaging. And then over time, you plant those little seeds and it comes back to you. People remember it and want to do things for you because you've been doing things for them.
Somebody yesterday told me that she sets up Google alerts for people that she networks with. And we were kind of laughing how that sounded creepy, but it was actually an excellent idea because then she could say, oh, congratulations, I saw this, or it just reminded her to even get in touch with them to send her, to send things like the articles, which I love. Did you know you wanted to work for yourself? I kind of want to transition to like the experience of being in corporate America, working for somebody else, and then now you're running a startup, like what that sort of logistical and even like emotional transition was.
Not at all. Not at all. I'll tell you, I had this insight into this, women and money, right? Women don't have as much money as men do. Women don't have as much wealth as men do. Whereas the gender pay gap, which we talk about so much, is pre-pandemic slowly moving in the right direction. the gender wealth gap, how much money we have, is 32 cents to a white man's dollar and been moving in the wrong direction. And so I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about, if we go from how much we bring in the pay to how much we keep, what's that difference? And some of it is we, don't spend as long in the workforce. But some of it is we don't invest as much. Some of it is we have more debt. We don't manage our debt down as aggressively. And so I'm sort of thinking through this, and then began to realize that for the women on this Zoom, not investing as large a percent of your wealth as men are, right? Even adjusting for having less money, costs the women on this Zoom hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not $1 million plus over the course of their lives. Like, whoa. Looked at the industry, my industry, you mentioned, Claire, 85% of financial advisors are men. 99% of investment dollars are managed at companies owned by white men.
Right.
98% of mutual fund dollars are managed by men. So I'm like, well, I keep hearing from the industry that women don't invest as much as men do because they're risk averse. I mean, how many? We've all heard that, right? Women are risk averse. I'm like, and their reasoning for it is women don't invest as much, therefore they must be risk averse. I said, there's another actual solution, sort of explanation for it, which is that women aren't buying what you're selling. That this trade Bitcoin, buy a mutual fund, watch CNBC, have Kramer hit the gong, isn't appealing to us. Maybe an industry, again, where 99% of it all, maybe they built the industry for themselves. And so what if someone were to build a business for women and just go into the deep research on what engages women in investing or engaging with their debt, what is. And so I started this, and then I went to all the big banks where I know this, I've known the CEOs over time. I'm like, look, here's this hypothesis, this opportunity, this ability to change lives. And I'll never forget, Claire, I was in with the CEO of one of the largest banks in the world having breakfast. And I went through this whole thing with him and I said, it's a business opportunity. So women have a lot of money and they just not. And he looks at me and he's like, yeah, but Sallie, don't their husbands manage it for them? And I'm like, what? Yes, but I just told you 80% of women die single. 90% of us manage our money on our own. And he couldn't even hear me. And so then I thought, well, someone needs to build this. They're going to have a deep finance background, be able to build a tech team, be able to raise venture money, be dumb enough to put their whole life into it.
Sorry.
Like, who the hell is going to do that? I think it's me.
Anyone who runs a startup, I'm just laughing because, you have to be slightly nuts to go all in on this idea and run your own thing. Okay, so you start Ellevest. What has been the most surprising thing that maybe you've learned about yourself, about business, since starting it?
I have to tell you that I don't mean to be weird about this. I stood in line to vote for 3.5 hours in the cold. And it was sort of drizzly here in New York. And about an hour in, the woman behind me saw my Ellevest bag and said, oh my gosh, do you work at Ellevest? And I said, yes, I do. And she burst into tears. And she said, it brings me to tears. She said, you've changed my life. And, I was nervous about money before. I felt like it was so unapproachable. It made me feel stupid. And then I, started taking action, and I just feel so much better. What I learned, sort of what's underlying that, Claire, is today, money is women's number one source of stress. Number one. The act of saving, investing, it doesn't matter how much you've got in the account, but taking action is the number one driver of our confidence in our future. It's not the relationship we're in, how much our boss likes us. It's, are you doing this thing for me? And so I remember when my kids were in kindergarten, you take a frown and turn it upside down. What we're doing at Ellevest is helping people take those steps to be in control. And so I laughed with my team. I said, I used to work at Citibank and Bank of America, so I've made plenty of people cry, but never in a good way. And just that you could affect someone like that, particularly now with the pandemic and how women have taken a hit backwards has just meant a lot to me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Somebody asked, I don't know if you felt any kind of sexism when you were, did you have to raise money, I imagine?
Oh my gosh.
And being in the position, being on sort of the other side, I imagine, of the table. I don't know if you went to financial institutions or what your perspective was like.
Yeah,
Now,
it's awful.
the one
It's
asking
awful.
for money.
The early round was easy because I went to people we didn't raise that much the first round. I went to people who I'd worked with before who were like, yeah, Sallie will go through a brick wall. But once you got to the traditional venture capitalist, I could get the meetings because I've been privileged enough to know people. But when you get in the room, you quickly sort of become conversant in how their own biases would affect their decision making. And so I'll give you one pretty subtle example, which is, so today, Ellevest is really we started as an investing firm, we've added banking and coaching, but so we're the only financial company focused on women. Mm. Every other investing firm has 86% men as clients, 90% men as clients, 75% men as clients. Those are just the numbers in the industry. Over here for men, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of them that are valued at the multiple billions of dollars. The question I would always get when I bring in Ellevest is, yes, but what if a competitor comes in? And this bias, there can be dozens for men, but only one for women, and only one can be successful, is just an inherent bias. And, on top of that, I didn't hit their pattern recognition, right? I'm a woman in my 50s who's had success at big companies, not at smaller companies. And so you could feel that that's cute. And is this a vanity project for you? And, are you in it? Again, here it comes for your profile. And so you could feel that it's hell. It's really hell. If anybody can avoid it, I tell you to avoid it because, you might have heard women get something like 3 to 5% of venture capital dollars. In fintech, which is what Ellevest is, it's 1%. Now, the great news is that I said, all right, I can't fight that battle. So let me find people who already agree with me. And they're not going to be the brand name venture capitalists, but we were fortunate enough to get a Melinda Gates, a Penny Pritzker, a Valerie Jarrett, right? Rethink Impact. And again, that's my privilege because I was able to, because of my connections, work my way to get to meet folks like that. But it was the traditional venture route is sort of hell.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we get into money advice, I have to ask you about what happened in January. So BLM protests were happening, and you wrote what I thought was a brave article. You sent out a newsletter. I appreciated the transparency so much. You said it was titled "Holding Ourselves Accountable on Racial Justice." Okay, so your decision to write this, I'd love to know, and then how you are doing that moving forward.
Yeah. So I love my company. I love these young folks who work there who just show me no respect. And it's great. I'm sort of like, at some point, can I be right about something? But these kids who are in their 20s and their young 30s, and in last summer when I'm going to be really honest and transparent here, when we had the racial justice protest in the late spring, I'm sitting here saying, well, Ellevest, all right, we're 75% women, we're 50% people of color, we're 20+% LGBTQIA, we're woke, we got it. And a couple of the younger folks came to me and said, yes, and you have no Black people on your leadership team. And I'm like, yeah, but I got the people, I got this person of color and I've got that. And they're like, Sallie, and versus the financial services industry, we're so much better. And they're like, is that where I was actually sitting at this desk and I started to sweat. And these young people were holding me accountable. And so I wrote a note last summer that was, by the way, it's actually worse than that because I always dragged the industry on their lack of diversity. And it's like, lack of particularly gender diversity. And so I wrote a note last summer that was, this is where we have fallen short. And I commit to you that we will make a series of changes. So I can tell you today that at the leadership team, we've got our underrepresented minorities are overrepresented including we've got 2 Black women on, I think we're a 10, 11 person leadership team. And we also have changed our products in some ways. So we have a gender lens investment product, intentional impact portfolios, in which you can invest in companies that have policies and practices that advance women, divest from companies that hurt women. And we realized over last summer that we needed to have a distinct anti-racist lens as well, because if you aren't specifically addressing the issues that impact Black women, Black people, then you're not helping Black women advance. And so it was I try to remain open and learn and really recognize my privilege and how that can be used in the ways that only an Ellevest can use it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What was the reaction to it?
Good. I mean, I think we are one of the few who've had that kind of transparency.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was so brave. I was hoping other people would follow your lead.
Well, they don't.
I know. Of course they don't.
They don't, because it sort of goes away. And so, if it's not sort of top of mind, then they'll come back to it. The industry has a history of coming back to it at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But this is why it's important that we support each other. One of the reasons we started, I hired financial advisors at Ellevest to engage with women of means. I wasn't going to do it at first. We're going to be digital only. We're not, wealthier women, they're fine. But I had some women, successful women, come to me and say, Sallie, I'm tired of supporting companies and institutions that have not supported me. Mm-hmm. And I'm tired of having my money managed at a company I wouldn't let my daughter work at. And so, for us to recognize that we might not have as much money as the men do, but we control 85% of consumer spending within our households. We have trillions of dollars to invest, and that if we're really thoughtful about how to use that money, that we can change the world. But, it's easier. It's not easy to do always.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think there's this misperception that you need to be wealthy to make money, or you have to have money to invest money. Maybe to a certain degree. I mean, if you can only afford to buy so much, then yes, you have to have a roof over your head. But I got a few questions that were about, can I even just put $100 a month away for retirement? Okay, so the answer is yes to that. But I do want to talk to you a little bit about helping women get over the fear of investing, and how much they should start investing. Now, of course, everybody should join Ellevest, and you'll get all the answers to all the questions that you have. But
there's no doubt about that, Claire. But I will say at Ellevest, our investing minimum is $0. I mean, I can't give you a diversified investment portfolio for less than $1. And the reason we did this, because if I could just be a little sparky, is investment minimums at companies that I ran, right? Whether it was $250,000 or $10,000, investing minimums are sexist and racist. They just are, right? That's a barrier to wealth creation. So first of all, in investing, I'm going to talk about, we tend to, when we talk about investing, it's the stock market. It's not just the stock market. Of course, it's bonds, which tended to have less volatility, somewhat lower returns. But let's talk about the stock market anyway. The stock market, we women tend to think of as having performed historically like this. Okay?
Yeah.
We all remember the downs. Oh, March was terrible. 2008 was horrible. So we tend to think it's up and down. The truth is the stock market historically has done this.
Right.
And so there's been volatility, but it's been upward trending. In fact, the stock market has on average since the 1920s gone up 9.5% a year. In contrast, real estate, has volatilities tend to go up about 3% a year. And if you need any evidence as to the strength of the stock market historically, look at 2020. I mean, nobody, if anybody on the planet who tells you would have given them that scenario and you would have told them what the stock market would do, nobody would have guessed that. What the stock market represents is this underlying entrepreneurialism of the country, that not every company does well, but that entrepreneurs find ways to grow almost regardless. Not every year, maybe not every 5 years, but here are 2 stats for you to show the power of investing, and particularly the power of compounding. Compounding is when, you invest a little bit of money, you earn a return on it, and then the next return you earn is on the return and the money. And then the next return you earn is the return and the return and the return on the return. And Warren Buffett has called this a snowball. Warren Buffett has said, or Einstein said, it's the eighth wonder of the world. Because if you leave the money in long enough and it's upward trending, your original amount's that big and the amount you have is that big. So two things, one of which is that investing historically has not been particularly risky over the long term. So by long term, 15 years. If you had put your money in the stock market on any day since the 1920s and left it there for 15 years, your chances of a positive return historically were 99%.
Wow, it's guaranteed.
If you had invested like we like people to do at Ellevest, which is a little bit out of every paycheck, your chances were 100%. Okay? Number one. Number two, power of compounding. Claire, you and I are going to get into a time machine and go back to the year 1900. Okay. We're going to invest $1,000, which is a lot of money at the time. Okay. We're going to leave it there and we're just going to let it grow. A lot of bad things are going to happen over the next 120 years, right? We got this pandemic. We had the Spanish flu of 1917, World War I, World War II, Vietnam War, Korean War, stagflation, inflation, great market crash, subprime market crash, internet bubble burst, terrorism on U.S. soil.
Oh, God.
Right? I mean, you know, all these wrinkles and more. All my mother's wrinkles. Yeah. And if I were to say to you, well, Claire, what do you think that $1,000 is worth in 2020? The correct answer is $58 million.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
This is the power of compounding. If Donald Trump, you know, if we wanted Donald Trump to be richer than he is today, assuming the numbers he says are correct, rather than investing in New York real estate and being a developer, he should have put his dad's money in the stock market. And you know, there's research that says he would have been wealthier. This is what we've been missing out on as a gender, is not having that path towards that wealth creation.
Yeah. What about Bitcoin? I mean, you mentioned it earlier. I got a few questions about it. Crypto in general, I'm sure you're getting asked all the time. So just what are your thoughts and any recommendations for us?
So Bitcoin today has no fundamental underpinning to it. Whereas if you invest in the stock of, pick it, IBM, Amazon, at Ellevest, we do diversified investment portfolios. So a big portfolio of a bunch of different companies. What's underlying is the business, right? The company earned this amount, they paid a dividend of that amount. They're fundamentals. Bitcoin is only how much other people think it should be. That is it.
Okay.
And so if you want to buy Bitcoin, I will not say invest, I'll say buy. What I want you to do is take the money that you were going to gamble in Las Vegas this year, the trip that got canceled because of COVID, you're going to take that money and you're going to put it in Bitcoin. Because the chances of it going up or down are like playing a slot machine. And yes, I know people have made a lot of money. People have lost a lot of money. There's no fundamental underpinning. So only do it for fun with your fun money that you can 100% lose.
Okay. Because my partner and I, we've invested in, or I purchased Bitcoin. I mean, and it's going up wildly. Then of course there's a day where it drops.
Yeah.
And then it goes up again. I mean, and this is where the tolerance for risk comes in. I mean, and I know you sort of responded to this already, but I just want to get it through everybody's head who's watching, because this really is maybe a misconception though. Is it risk averse, or is it really just we don't have the literacy for it? And is it good to be a little bit risk averse? I know women technically are, quote, better investors than men. So like, what are we doing right also?
I would use different language. I would say we're risk aware. The gender difference is not, oh, I'm so scared of risk. The gender difference is, hey, can you tell me how much could this go down? How bad could this be? Right? If, you know, I invest and there's a 1987 again, what could that look like? And you know, what our research tells us, in my experience, is men will invest. I love them. I've been married to a couple of them. I think they're amazing. So this is nothing against them. Men will invest when they don't understand. When I was at Smith Barney, 84% of our clients, men and women, did not know what a managed account was. Neither gender would ask. I love to joke because men don't ask for directions and women do. I don't want to bother. The
Right.
men would buy it and the women wouldn't.
Okay.
And so that's the gender difference, is we like to get our A's. So I better understand it. I better get it. I better be careful with it. But what we found at Ellevest is when you do that, we track you to your goal, right? We expect your portfolio to grow this amount and you'll be in here. When you do that, women will actually take on more risk than men will once
Okay.
they understand it.
Interesting. Very interesting. I know we're about 5 minutes over for you, so I appreciate you sticking around. Let's maybe close it up with, give us the pitch for Ellevest. And there's a quote that I read, a mantra that you have, which I want you to expand on for just a minute, which is "Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down." So maybe we'll address that quote first, and then you can talk about Ellevest, and we can, tell folks sort of next steps that they can take to manage their money.
I don't know if anybody remembers, when I grew up as a child in the 70s and 80s, there was a little thing you'd hit and it'd pop down and pop back up and pop back up. And that's been sort of a mantra for me, which is, I refuse, in my ups and downs in my career, I really do believe my success and my failure are the same, different sides of the same coin. That I would never have been as successful as I was fortunate enough to be if I hadn't taken the risk that also got me fired. And you're not allowed to say, I don't want the risk, I just want the good stuff. You've got to be taking on the risk in order to get it. And so when I set out and said, I want to have a career that's exciting and I want to go for it, then I can't allow myself to, when I get knocked down, get embarrassed and leave and, feel like, oh, everybody's watching me.
Yeah.
And so it comes from a place of such gratitude that I had the opportunity to do things I never imagined I'd do when I was growing up in South Carolina. And so if I get knocked down, it's sort of my responsibility to get back up and do this work we're doing at Ellevest to get more money in the hands of women, because it's good for all of us. So, in terms of Ellevest, we are working to build a company, with, I think, the greatest of missions to get more money in the hands of women. I talked before about money being a source of stress and taking action being a source of confidence. We live that every day, and that, helping women get over that I'm not good with money, or I feel ashamed about money, or I don't deserve money, or, but having a sense of abundance about it. And we're trying to do it by building a company that's mission aligned from our investors to our employees, to our clients, and even to helping our customers if they choose to invest in companies run by other women. And when we do that, I can't find anything bad that happens. It's good for women, right? It's good for our families. It's good for our children. It's good for the economy. It's good for markets. And so I would say we're the only one that has been built expressly for women. And what does that even mean? An example, in your retirement accounts at Ellevest, we are the only investment advisor out there that takes into account your gender. Why does that matter? Well, let me tell you why it matters. Because when you're planning your retirement, women's salaries peak sooner than men, women earn less than men, and we die later than men. And so if an investing firm says, well, you're average and you're a guy, okay, fine, you earned more and you died sooner. You ended up dying with money. Mm-hmm. If you're a woman, the impact is the opposite. And so these are places where gender can matter, as well as usability. What we found is, trying to make really money effortless for someone, as well as providing, we recently added a ton of learning and a ton of coaching. Yeah. We're finding the coaching, the money coaching, the career coaching is exactly what people are wanting and needing right now. So
I was actually going to ask, for COVID, did that change any of your offerings? I mean, I think you had a huge launch, the digital membership, maybe during COVID, but I know it was in the works before. Have you needed to offer anything differently or help women in a different way? Yeah. Oh, okay.
We found this thirst for knowledge and coaching and guidance that really came through, as folks are saying, this is no longer, it might not be a nice to do, help me figure out my budget, please. Yeah. Help me make sure my retirement is on track. Help me think through how I'm spending. Am I spending it as intentionally as I would like to? Investing, what do I really need to know amongst all the jargon? And so that was a shift for us that we made in the spring to really bring even more rich information to our community.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is the silver lining right now is these are things that we should have all been doing anyway. We hear that we should have savings. Now we know that we need to have savings. So,
yeah. And we do it through what I think is the best deal in the industry, which is a monthly fee. Whether it's $1 for a basic account, $5 or $9. And I keep telling the team, it's the only membership that I know of that literally pays for itself, because things like cash back on a debit card, where you're just like, why should I be an Ellevest member? How can I not be an Ellevest member, given what we all care about?
How do people stay in touch with you before I let you go? Following you, I know you do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, so I imagine people are eager to stay up to date with you.
Yeah. Well, so definitely I'm on LinkedIn, but also come on over to Ellevest. We'd love to have all of you join us. We've got a newsletter where we keep in touch with folks. We have a ton of information for you. I see that Gayla Jackson, I saw a comment from her come through, who is our lead career coach, is there and available as well. And so following her, follow us on Instagram, you'll see some of the most insightful career advice and tidbits from Gayla. So come on over to ellevest.com. We'd love to have you questions. Us.
I love it. Thank you. And I see Claire Lorenzo is here too, who's also on your team answering some questions. All right, I'm going to let you go. I know Melissa asked, isn't it till 7 p.m.? It is, but I'm going to be doing a reading for the book for Ladies Get Paid, which of course everybody's welcome to stay. You as well, Sallie, but I know you have a family and a life, and I want to respect your time, which we already went over. Thank you so much for being here.
Congratulations. I'm so pleased for you and proud of you. And thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you. See you soon, Sallie. Stay well. And for everybody else who's here, I'm going to just do a short reading from Ladies Get Paid, since I couldn't really have a book. I didn't have a book party or book launch, and this, of course, would have been in person in a bookstore in Left Bank Books, who's hosting this. So we're going to do our version of a book tour. I'll go ahead and do a reading. Happy to answer any questions you have about Ladies Get Paid, the book, career questions. We'll probably end up going a little bit over 7 p.m. So again, if you need to hop off, that's totally fine. And we'll be recording this. So let me get started. And by the way, this is about how everything began, the beginning of Ladies Get Paid, how it all began. Before Ladies Get Paid, the book, came Ladies Get Paid, the organization. It was born from 3 pivotal moments in my life. The first happened at an advertising festival. Party after party, CEOs of major brands socialized and drank with those who wanted their business. It was mostly men. At the time, I worked for a professional platform that connected creatives with jobs, and I was there to find clients. The festival opened with an outdoor cocktail party. Whose wife are you? He was tall, probably around 60 years old, dressed in an expensive-looking white linen suit. It had been barely 5 minutes since I'd walked into the party. I gritted my teeth and stretched my lips into what I hoped was a smile. I'm here on business. This was going to be a long week. Around-the-clock networking is tiring, and it was. But what was even more exhausting was the invisible, though sometimes obvious, imbalance of power between genders. Men greatly outnumbered women, and their seniority dwarfed ours. I needed these men to send me their business, but so many saw me, and many of the other women there, not as valuable professional connections, but as people to party with. Repeatedly, I had to wrestle the conversation back to a place that was relevant to my work, or simply back to a place where I felt comfortable. It was draining, but I had done this dance before. In fact, I'd been doing it my entire career. Something profound happened toward the end of the festival. Needing to pee and needing a break, I sought refuge in the women's restroom. It turned out I wasn't the only one. Crowded in there were women of all ages, huddled together, connecting and commiserating. They traded business cards and tips on who to avoid and who was actually serious about networking. These women had come to the festival to get shit done. It just happened to be getting done in the ladies' room. I spent some time there recharging, then took a deep breath and went back out into the fray. After the week was over, I slept for 2 days straight. I felt demoralized and a bit disgusted as I replayed each unsettling interaction over and over again, from Mr. Whose wife are you to the guy who slurred, "You're hot," when I pitched him a business idea. Then my disgust turned inward. What had I done to attract this kind of attention? Was my dress too short? Had I been too friendly? This was an all too familiar loop, a constant refrain throughout my whole career, and maybe even my whole life. But for the first time, something short-circuited my self-doubt. For years, I'd struggled to be taken seriously as a successful, ambitious woman, questioning myself in the process. One memory stood out in particular. I was at dinner with a man a colleague had introduced me to, thinking we might partner on a project. Toward the end of the evening, he grabbed my hand and pulled me in to kiss him. I snatched my arm back. "Excuse me," I said in disbelief. The man looked utterly confused. "But you gave me your business card," he sputtered. These are all true stories, by the way, people. I wish we were in person and we were having a cocktail and I would tell you more. Besides the fact that it was a troubling misinterpretation of signals, what stayed with me was the fact that I was being perceived as a potential sexual partner instead of a professional one, despite every indication that I was there to do business. And as a result, networking with this person, who otherwise could have been valuable for my work, was an opportunity I would not pursue. It also made me feel like shit. I had a realization though. How many other times had I missed opportunities, not because of a lack of ability or performance, but because I was a woman? How many hours had I wasted agonizing about how to maneuver among men like these in this world that they had created? I thought of all the energy I'd wasted seeking approval from the men around me. I couldn't continue like this. Something needed to change. I opened my laptop and I Googled 3 words: women, work, and inequality. What I learned shook me to my core. The majority of today's college graduates are women, yet less than 22% of us make it past middle management. The wage gap, which is usually referred to as being 78 to 80 cents to the man's dollar, is not the reality for everyone. Depending on your race and a myriad of other factors, it can be so much worse. Black women make between 63 and 68 cents on the dollar, while Hispanic women make a mere 55 cents on the dollar. I was shocked. I felt angry. And on top of that, I was ashamed for not knowing it was that bad, and that reeked of my privilege. I'd grown up being told I could do and be whatever I dreamed of, that our workplaces are a meritocracy, and that the fight for equality was over and won by my mother's generation. I was finally understanding that this was not reality, and I wanted to do something about it. As I continued to research women in the workplace, I discovered an entire vocabulary that put words to things I'd always felt, but hadn't known how to articulate. For example, I learned about emotional labor, the contortionism that women, especially women of color, perform to fit into and accommodate environments where they are not the status quo. All of this was enlightening, but it was also overwhelming. With such systemic entrenched bias, what could I as an individual possibly do? So I got depressed for a little bit. A year later, I was approached by an art director friend of mine, Lita. She'd recently found out that a male art director friend of hers was charging almost double what she was. This discovery made Lita realize how little she knew about pricing and how important it was for this to be a larger, more open conversation with our peers. She was also concerned that the lack of transparency might mean other people were underpricing themselves, which in turn could be bringing down wages for everyone, which is why nobody should be underpricing themselves. It's bad for all of us. I'm giving commentary on my own writing. Okay. Because I was the director of marketing for a platform that helped people find work, I was in a position to bring information and awareness to a large network of people. Lita wondered if there was something I could do to help women learn what they should be paid. It began to dawn on me that in so many ways, money symbolized much of what I'd been agonizing over in the past year. Money and having the same opportunities to earn just as much as men was about more than a number. It represented value, worth, and above all, power. All things that as women, we have historically been denied. This conversation with Lita happened during the lead up to the 2016 presidential election. As I thought about organizing an event for women to talk about money, I became intrigued by the town halls the candidates were hosting, and I thought it could be a good alternative in lieu of the format of a typical panel. I envisioned one made up of women of different backgrounds and professions, trading stories and advice about women in an open forum, essentially democratizing a subject that had always seemed to be in the domain of experts, men. More important, it could finally get us talking about a topic that was taboo, that was considered crass, but that men seemed able to navigate with ease. Maybe if one of us spoke up, others would follow. All we needed was a bit of encouragement. To get people to sign up, I asked 6 women I admired if they would be open to sharing their stories. I also asked each of them to recommend a few women they thought should be there. For every woman I was introduced to, I asked if they could recommend another woman who might want to attend. This went on until we reached capacity. The day of the event, 100 women came. They crowded together on couches, spilling out onto the floor, passing around bottles of wine, buzzing with energy. There was also definitely tequila. If anybody was there, let me know in the chat. It was Cinco de Mayo and it was totally insane. It reminded me of the ladies' room at the advertising festival. It was my first public speaking experience, and I knew I didn't have all of the answers. I was there to learn just as much as they were. I told the room that we would get out of the event only as much as we were willing to give. To receive help meant we had to offer it. We raised our glasses to one another and we began. It was like a cork shooting out of a champagne bottle. One story begat another as these women opened up to one another and to themselves. They shared stories of disappointments and struggles, missed opportunities, denied promotions. There were lots of tears, but lots of high fives too. One woman stood up and declared, "I'm an illustrator and I make a shit ton of money." She got a standing ovation. I was right. This conversation was about so much more than the dollars in our pockets. It was about solidarity. It was about self-worth. It was also about taking action to right the wrongs that we'd been laboring under. We could no longer wait and hope to be rewarded. Money was the first step, a tangible thing that could mark progress on what was sure to be a long road ahead. I'm almost done with the introduction. I'm so grateful to you all for staying here. To close the wage gap, we could start with ourselves by advocating for our worth. But for all of us to rise, we needed to work together. 3 hours later, the event was technically over, but no one was leaving. I was becoming very antsy since the venue was charging me by the hour. "Go home," I shouted as I turned off the lights. Everyone reluctantly shuffled out, and I could hear them discussing what bar to go to. They didn't want the conversation to end. As one of the women walked out, she pulled me aside. "This," she said, motioning around the room, "you should do this." I didn't know what she meant, but something magical had happened that night. On my way home, I felt electric. That energy in the room was coursing through my veins, and my mind was racing. It had been over a year since I'd Googled workplace inequality, and I thought that maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something big, something that could lead toward making things right. Well, I didn't quite know what was next. Perhaps the first step was simply for us to share our stories as we had done that night. Over the course of the next 12 months, I organized 250 town halls in 19 cities, bringing together thousands of women to talk about money, power, work, and self-worth. And every time a woman got up to speak, she discovered she was not alone. As I watched them, I knew there had to be a way to harness the strength we have when we come together. I wanted to see it move beyond those rooms and those town halls, to build an even larger collective that could allow us to learn from one another, encourage one another, and share practical advice and professional guidance to get us where we wanted to be. The town halls were our catharsis, but with no action afterward, all that inspiration and energy would be wasted, and nothing would change. While organizing these events, I witnessed the power in peer-to-peer sharing, but I also saw that there was a great need for concrete tools to fix actual problems. One topic that kept coming up in the town halls all across the country was insecurity surrounding salary negotiation. Teaching more women how to negotiate their salaries wasn't a big picture structural change, but it could at least start moving the needle in the short term. As I fit the pieces together, I knew there was something special happening. But what I didn't know was that a movement was being born. This one area of actionable change became the cornerstone of our movement and a springboard for accessing and improving broader issues impacting women in the workplace. Almost done. As of this writing, the Ladies Get Paid community has grown to more than 100,000 women who are all working together to advance women in the workplace. In this book, I will share the stories of 9 members. Some names and identifying details have been changed. Each in their own way, these women battle internal and external struggles, pushing up against the bounds of what they and others expect of themselves, and are ultimately able to reach places of purpose, fulfillment, and power. For many of them, this meant undoing assumptions and rebuilding expectations, examining where they came from, and becoming clear on what direction they will go. In their stories, I will highlight what they can teach us. In these moments, I hope you will reflect on your own life and how you'll use these tools to rocket yourself forward. This book is organized into 4 parts. The first part explores the obstacles we may have in ourselves. We'll examine expectations we may have inherited from our families, the media, our communities, and other influences about what career success looks like and what we can achieve. From there, we'll learn to identify and evaluate opportunities to make sure we're headed on a path that's aligned with our values and goals. Then we'll break down imposter syndrome and perfectionism, 2 major internal roadblocks, often resulting from systemic and cultural obstacles that stand in our way of feeling and doing our best. In the second part of the book, we'll broaden our focus. You'll learn how to build and leverage your network to get you where you want to go. This includes interviewing, securing, and negotiating for a new job. But getting the job is only the first step. You need to also set yourself up for success. That means educating yourself on how to develop healthy work habits for the long game. Things like conducting an inventory of your energy and setting boundaries for yourself and others so that you don't burn out. You can't do well if you aren't well. Then we'll explore how to navigate upward, cultivating a support system, increasing our visibility, and taking advantage of opportunities. The ultimate goal? To seek out rewarding challenges and do our best work in a place that recognizes and rewards us. At a certain point, however, trying to do well in a system that was not made by or for us is not good enough. The system itself has to change. The final part of the book is about what we can do to make our workplaces more inclusive and supportive of women, including policies and practices companies can implement to make that happen. But for true systemic change to happen, we need updated and evolved laws. The appendix includes information on how to lobby your elected officials to enact laws that ensure wide-ranging and long-lasting progress. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that some of the lessons in this book come from a place of relative privilege. Being able to walk away from a negotiation or turn down a job are luxuries. And while as women we are bound together by our marginalized status, my experience in the workplace as a white cisgender woman is not the same as that of a Black woman, or a Hispanic woman, or a woman with a disability, or a trans woman, or any of the countless women in groups pushed to the fringes of society who have been fighting these battles for generations. I firmly believe that we have progressed only as far as those who still struggle the most among us. If we're going to make meaningful change, it has to benefit all of us, not just some of us, and we have to do it together. Let's get started. 67 people stayed. I'm so honored. Thank you. It was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and mostly tears that went into writing this book. So I am incredibly appreciative that you joined me to hear from Sallie and to allow me to read the beginning of my book. I'm happy to take questions. I know we're technically at time, but where else do we have to go? We're all at home. So throw in any questions that you have. Thank you for your wonderful, thank you. And I see, actually, I'm not going to call her out because I don't want to put her on the spot, but one of the amazing women who is in our book is actually here right now. I see her and her chapter is about burning out. I mean, everything that happened to the women in this book is real. There is nothing that's been changed except for a couple of names. So I want to thank her and everybody who allowed me to share their story. It took a lot of vulnerability. And I already know that it's inspiring women. I've heard from some women how when they read it, they go, oh my God, this happened to me too. So that's, first step is always to know that you're not alone. And then from there, we have to figure out what to actually fucking do about it to make change in our lives. Good. People are reading it. And if you haven't yet purchased it, please, Left Bank Books. I'm going to send you all a link afterwards. They are the place to purchase it from. Once you do buy it from them, I would love you to give me a review on Amazon, assuming that you enjoy the book, which is good news. You don't have to purchase from Amazon to give a review, and reviews do go a long way in selling books. So that's a gift to me if you would do that. I also, okay, good. I have a little question here. Christina, what advice would you give a woman who wants to do more to empower female entrepreneurs and help them get more funding? I say go check out I Fund Women. We use them to crowdfund. There's a lot of interesting good stuff there because I think for a lot of companies, it's not all companies where it's right to get investment. I mean, I know Sallie really warned against venture capital. Angel investment is better, right? That's getting seed money, small amounts of money from other people. That being said, crowdfunding, it's accessible. And then you can sort of use it as a machine for marketing too. We had a very successful campaign. It was game changing. I Fund Women. Thanks, Erica. Good to see you too. And also we just did a webinar the other day about how to become an angel investor. So I mentioned that. So once we get that up in our video library, I'll send a link out as well. If there are no more questions, I wish you all just a beautiful night wherever you are. The last thing I do have to acknowledge is the reason that we're able to do this, and by we, I mean me getting to wear pajama bottoms and sit here and be with you all, is because Comcast, NBC, Universal sponsored the tour. And so they help get this lady paid. So we want to thank them also. You're all still here. So if there's no more questions, I am going to let you go. Thank you all just for your support. Don't email me because email is scary as hell for me right now. So what I would love you to do is if you have any questions or want to share your progress, like I want to keep me posted. I want to know who you are. I just put my Instagram in there. Claire Gets Paid. I do respond to every DM. May take me a moment, but I will get back to you. We'll send out an email tomorrow with the recording of this and other ways to get involved in Ladies Get Paid. If you're not in our Slack group, it's free. So go ahead and do that, ladiesgetpaid.com. There's a really nice jobs channel in there if you're looking for work, which I know a lot of people are. Thank you all so much. We're going to have the next book event coming up in about a week. You'll hear about it. I appreciate you all opening your emails too. Thank you for that click-through rate. And Claire Lorenzo got her job because of Ladies Get Paid. Yeah, good karma, good karma. Stay well, everybody, and happy day after inauguration. Hallelujah. Halla fucking luya.